Hey guys, tonight we begin with something truly unsettling. A journey not into a historical period, but into a stark, unvarnished reality that will challenge every comfortable notion you hold about the past. We're talking about a time of rampant plagues, brutal public punishments that defied all concepts of human dignity, and a monotonous, barely edible gruel known simply as pottage. We're diving deep, unflinchingly, into what daily life was really like during the European Middle Ages, specifically focusing on the most challenging aspects of the period between the 12th and 14th centuries, the very cusp of the terrifying Black Death that would soon reshape the continent. Forget the romanticized, sugar-coated visions of noble knights in shining armor, grand feasts in towering, meticulously clean castles, and the idyllic, simple life often portrayed in Hollywood blockbusters or idealized historical fiction. Those are convenient, comforting fictions. The stark, unvarnished truth is far more grim, dangerous, shockingly unsanitary, and psychologically brutal than your modern mind can possibly conceive. In the raw, unfiltered reality of this era, you, with your delicate modern sensibilities, your absolute reliance on advanced technology, your ingrained expectations of basic comfort, pervasive safety, and fundamental human rights, would not, could not, last a single agonizing, disease-ridden day. Your body would betray you, your mind would shatter, and your spirit would be utterly crushed within hours. So, before you get too comfortable in your climate-controlled home, perhaps sipping on a filtered, ice-cold drink, surrounded by the comforting glow of your smart devices, take a moment to truly engage with this journey. If you genuinely enjoy peeling back the layers of sanitized history, confronting the raw, uncomfortable, yet utterly fascinating truths of our ancestors' precarious existence, and understanding the profound chasm that separates their world from ours, then please take a moment to interact. A simple like on this video and a subscription to the channel genuinely helps us continue to unearth and share these often forgotten, profoundly unsettling stories from the past. And as always, I'm genuinely curious to know where you're tuning in from tonight and what time it is for you. Drop a comment below and let me know. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from across the globe on these harrowing historical explorations. Now, dim the lights, perhaps turn on a fan for that soft background hum to distract you from the phantom smells you're about to imagine. And let's ease into tonight's deeply uncomfortable, yet profoundly enlightening journey together. This is not a quaint historical reenactment. This is a vivid, sensory immersion into a world that would undoubtedly break you. The brutal dawn. Waking up in 1345 AD. A sensory assault. Congratulations. Against staggering odds, you've just blinked awake on a bitterly cold, relentlessly damp morning in the year of our Lord 1345 AD. The good news, if you can call it that, you're alive. A small fleeting victory in a world where death is a constant, uninvited companion. The bad news? So are the fleas, the lice, the bed bugs, and possibly a few hungry rodents that have shared your sleeping space and perhaps even nibbled on your extremities during the long, dark hours. Your bed is not the luxurious orthopedic mattress you're accustomed to. It's a crudely constructed wooden frame, often just a raised platform of logs, or more commonly, simply a designated pile on the packed earth floor. Upon this lies a half-rotted, perpetually damp and lumpy straw mattress. This mattress, mind you, hasn't been changed, cleaned, or refreshed in months, quite possibly over a year, accumulating layers of grime, human oils, sweat, and various bodily fluids. It's teeming with unseen insect life, smells distinctly of a barn floor, because in all likelihood, the hay used to stuff it was quite literally collected from a barn floor just a few months prior, and is a festering ecosystem unto itself. There's no luxurious memory foam, no ergonomically designed pillows to cradle your head, and definitely no soft, pristine Egyptian cotton sheets to caress your skin. Just a coarse, scratchy, heavy wool blanket, stiff with accumulated dirt, human effluvia, and whatever else has clung to it over countless nights, now weighing roughly as much as a small damp sheep. The sensation against your skin is abrasive, irritating, and utterly alien. You blink awake, not to the gentle glow of a digital alarm clock, the cheerful chirping of birds, or the soft rays of a sunrise filtering through a clean glass window. Instead, your senses are immediately assaulted by the rude, unyielding, clangorous reverberation of the church bell echoing from the distant village square. It's the ubiquitous medieval alarm clock, only infinitely louder, far less merciful, and utterly inescapable. Its booming resonates through the very mud and timber walls of your crude dwelling, a constant jarring reminder of time's relentless march and the church's omnipresent authority. Your home itself is a small single-room hut, crudely constructed from wattle and daub, a mixture of woven sticks and mud, clay, or rough-hewn, unsealed timber. It has one or two small, uneven openings serving as windows, which are almost certainly unglazed. These apertures are covered only by a piece of animal hide, a warped and cracked wooden shutter, or a flimsy piece of oilcloth, letting in more icy draft and dampness than actual light. The floor beneath your bare, calloused feet is packed earth, perpetually cold, uneven, often muddy from constant tracking, and frequently damp from the elements seeping in. There's no concept of insulated walls, watertight roofs, or even proper drainage. Rain and ground moisture seep in constantly, creating a perpetually clammy atmosphere. There's no running water, no electricity, no indoor plumbing, no central heating. The only consistent source of light, aside from the sun, when it deigns to appear from behind persistent cloud cover, is the flickering, smoky orange glow of an open hearth built directly on the floor in the center of the room. This hearth, while providing the only meager heat, also fills the entire confined space with acrid, wood smoke-laden fumes that sting your eyes, make your throat scratchy, cause persistent coughing, and settle on everything: your coarse clothes, your matted hair, your skin, the rough-hewn furniture, like a fine, pervasive, suffocating layer of sooty dust. Ventilation is practically non-existent, making the air thick, choking, and difficult to breathe. Your entire family, your parents, siblings, perhaps a grandmother or aunt, and quite possibly a few essential animals, like a chicken or a piglet, shares this single, cramped, often windowless, and poorly ventilated space. Personal privacy, the idea of having a moment to yourself, a separate room, or even a truly closed-off corner, is a concept yet to be invented, utterly alien to your medieval ancestors. You can hear your siblings, your parents, and extended family members stirring beside you on their own straw piles, their morning coughs echoing in the dim, smoky light, a constant symphony of respiratory irritation. As you push yourself up, your ears are immediately filled with the raw, unfiltered sounds of rural medieval life. The shrill, insistent crow of a rooster just outside the flimsy door, the incessant buzzing of flies attracted to the omnipresent filth, the grunting of pigs rooting around in the mud of the yard, the distant bleating of sheep from the common pasture, the sharp, territorial bark of a dog, and the general cacophony of a pre-industrial dawn. You take a deeper breath, and your nose is immediately violently assaulted. The air is a dense, earthy, almost palpable smell. It's a suffocating, putrid mixture: damp, rotting straw, unwashed human bodies that haven't seen a proper bath in months, stale cooking fires from yesterday's meager meal, and the unmistakable, overpowering, pervasive stench of human and animal waste. This smell, you quickly realize with a horrifying certainty, is not fleeting. It is a constant clinging companion in the Middle Ages. It permeates your coarse woolen clothes, impregnates your hair, clings to your skin, becoming an invisible, offensive second skin that you can never quite shed, no matter how desperately you wish to. This is your life now. This is your inescapable reality, and it has only just begun. The sheer, relentless physical discomfort, the constant sensory overload, and the profound absence of anything you consider a basic amenity would render you utterly non-functional, nauseated, and overwhelmed within the first few hours. Your modern body, accustomed to comfort, would immediately protest in a cascade of headaches, skin irritations, and respiratory distress. The cuisine of despair, eating and drinking on the brink of starvation and disease. You're hungry. Your stomach growls in protest, accustomed to the regular calorie-rich and nutritionally balanced meals of modern life. But forget your artisanal sourdough and avocado toast, your ethically sourced fair trade coffee, or even your humble bowl of sugary vitamin-fortified cereal. Breakfast in 1345 is almost invariably pottage. This is not a quaint, rustic, or charming historical dish. It is a thick, gray, utterly unappetizing, and nutritionally marginal gruel. It's made from whatever coarse, cheapest grains are available, typically oats, barley, or peas, boiled endlessly in plain water, often for hours, until they dissolve into a viscous, gloopy, flavorless mess. If you're extraordinarily lucky, truly blessed by a bountiful season, there might be a few scavenged root vegetables, like onions or carrots, or some foraged wild greens thrown in to add minimal bulk or a faint hint of flavor. But more often than not, it's just grain and water, a bland, monotonous, and barely palatable sustenance. There's virtually no salt to speak of, as it was a precious commodity, no exotic spices, which were prohibitively expensive, reserved for the very rich, and definitely no sugar for that morning pick-me-up, or a pleasant sweet taste. Sweeteners like honey or fruit are incredibly rare luxuries, seasonal and often sold only at market for a price far beyond your reach. Meat is not a daily staple. It is a rare, cherished luxury reserved for major feast days like Christmas or Easter, or after a particularly successful, infrequent hunt. And hunting on a lord's land could be a capital offense for a peasant. When meat is available, it's usually tough, stringy, and poorly preserved, often salted or smoked without any modern understanding of food safety, leading to potential spoilage or parasite infestation. You eat what you grow when you can grow it, and when the harvest inevitably fails due to prolonged drought, devastating flood, rampant pests, or the ravages of war, you face the terrifying, immediate prospect of famine and mass starvation. This isn't just an unpleasant or restrictive diet. It's a constant, relentless act of bare-bones survival, designed purely for basic caloric intake, fueling a body perpetually on the brink of nutrient deficiency and debilitating weakness. Your water for drinking and cooking comes from the local communal well, a nearby stream, or the same river that frequently serves as the village latrine, waste disposal site, and laundry facility. It is, almost without exception, a potent, virulent breeding ground for every bacteria, virus, and parasite known to mankind, and probably a few terrifying new ones yet to be discovered by modern science. Cholera, dysentery, typhoid, these waterborne diseases are not abstract concepts. They are ever-present threats. So, as a result of this extreme water contamination, you mostly drink ale. Everyone drinks ale. Men, women, children, from dawn till dusk. It's not primarily because medieval people were constantly drunk, though chronic mild intoxication was undoubtedly prevalent, blurring the edges of a harsh reality. It's because ale, even a very weak, small beer type of ale, is a significantly safer alternative to the lethally contaminated water. The boiling process involved in brewing kills some, though certainly not all, of the pathogens. But it means you are constantly mildly hydrated on a weak, yeasty, often sour brew that still frequently carries parasites and contaminants, leading to chronic gastrointestinal distress, constant flatulence, and persistent parasitic infections that would leave you perpetually feeling unwell, fatigued, and often feverish. Imagine the constant stomach cramps, the unending bouts of diarrhea, the pervasive nausea, all while you're trying to perform back-breaking labor in the fields. Dental hygiene is a concept from a distant, unimaginable future. There is no toothpaste, no toothbrushes, no flossing, no dental visits. Your teeth are rotting in your mouth from an early age, causing constant, excruciating agony, cavities, severe abscesses, pus-filled infections that can spread to your jaw, face, or even brain, advanced gum disease, and chronic toothaches. These are not rare occurrences. They are universal, inescapable facts of medieval life. You will almost certainly lose most of your teeth by your 20s or 30s due to decay, infection, or being pulled out crudely by a blacksmith or barber surgeon without anesthesia. Eating anything tough, hard, or requiring significant chewing will become a daily torture. Imagine biting into that stale, hard, unleavened bread, or that tough, stringy, poorly cooked meat, with a mouth full of festering abscesses, sensitive exposed nerves, and numerous missing molars. Every bite is a challenge. Every meal a source of profound physical pain. Your diet is bland, monotonous, severely deficient in crucial vitamins and minerals, and designed purely for basic caloric intake and mere survival, not enjoyment or sustained health. The profound lack of fresh fruits and vegetables, especially during the long, harsh winter months, when only preserved and often nutrient-depleted foods are available, means you'll likely suffer from chronic malnutrition, scurvy, leading to constantly bleeding gums, loose teeth, extreme fatigue, and brittle bones, pellagra, and other debilitating vitamin deficiencies that manifest as chronic fatigue, widespread skin lesions, neurological issues, and pervasive physical weakness. Every meal, every sip of drink is a gamble, a potential source of debilitating illness, a constant reminder that your body is a fragile vessel in a hostile, unforgiving world. You are not eating for pleasure or even nourishment. You are simply postponing starvation and staving off the next wave of sickness. The Hygiene Horror Show, a world steeped in pervasive, unfathomable filth. Let's talk hygiene, or rather, the utter pervasive and inescapable lack thereof, a reality that would make your modern stomach turn. You won't be showering daily, weekly, or even monthly. For most common people, a full-body bath was an incredibly rare, monumental undertaking, perhaps a few times a year, if at all, typically on major feast days, before marriage, or if you were lucky enough to live near a thermal spring or public bathhouse, though even these were often unsanitary. Water was a precious commodity, laboriously fetched from a distant well or river, and heating it required an enormous amount of firewood and effort, making it a luxury. So you're not just dirty, you're permanently dirty. Your skin is coated in layers of accumulated grime, sweat, dead cells, and environmental pollutants like soot from the hearth. Your hair is perpetually matted, greasy, stiff with dirt and oils, a perfect welcoming habitat for lice, fleas, and other delightful parasites that cause constant maddening itching, skin irritation, and transmit diseases like typhus. Your clothes, typically made of coarse wool or rough linen are rarely, if ever, properly washed. They are worn until they literally disintegrate from overuse and age, meaning you carry the pervasive stench of weeks, months, or even years of accumulated dirt, sweat, smoke, and unidentifiable bodily effluvia. And human waste? It's quite literally everywhere. There are no flush toilets, no sophisticated sewage systems, no public sanitation infrastructure as we understand it. People relieve themselves in basic chamber pots, which are then emptied, without ceremony or discretion, into the nearest street, alleyway, garden, river, or simply tossed out the window with a perfunctory shout of garde-lou, a corruption of the French garde à l'eau, meaning watch out for the water. Imagine the sheer volume of human excrement accumulating daily in a bustling medieval town or city. Animals, from stray dogs and cats to scavenging pigs and chickens, roam freely through the streets of villages and towns, adding their own copious contributions to the pervasive muck. The streets themselves are rarely paved or cleaned. They are open, stagnant sewers, a putrid, vile, squelching mix of human and animal excrement, rotting food scraps, decaying refuse, and stagnant rainwater. You walk through this festering cesspit every single day, your rough leather shoes, if you even possess them, sinking into the foul, squelching mud, splashing unspeakable things onto your clothing. The stench is not just unpleasant, it is an overwhelming, nauseating, constant assault on your senses that would induce immediate vomiting in a modern person. You quickly learn to ignore it because there is absolutely no escape, no fresh air to be found. This isn't just unpleasant or aesthetically displeasing. It's a terrifying, ever-present breeding ground for every horrific disease imaginable: cholera, dysentery, typhoid fever, tuberculosis, smallpox, diphtheria. These waterborne and airborne diseases are not abstract concepts from history books. They are ever-present, lurking threats, thriving in every puddle, every breath of air, every bite of contaminated food, every casual contact. The concept of germ theory is millennia away. People believe diseases are caused by bad air, miasma, hence the use of strong perfumes or incense, divine punishment for sin, an imbalance of the body's four humors, or even the malevolent influence of witches, demons, or astrological alignments. So they rarely connect the pervasive, overwhelming filth to the widespread, constant sickness and the alarmingly high death rates that characterize medieval life. You are quite literally living in a gigantic, perpetually contaminated petri dish, a biological weapon designed to take you out. And it will. The sheer lack of personal space, the communal living conditions, often sharing dwellings with livestock, and the complete absence of any real understanding of hygiene mean that you are in constant, unavoidable contact with a bewildering array of pathogens. Your body, accustomed to antiseptic environments and regular bathing, would immediately rebel with skin rashes, infections, persistent itching, and chronic respiratory issues from the constant smoke and polluted air. The legal nightmare, justice, brutality, and the absolute absence of due process. You think you have inherent human rights? Forget the Magna Carta for a moment, as its protections primarily applied to a select group of powerful nobles, and definitely forget anything resembling modern due process, the presumption of innocence, or a fair trial by a truly impartial jury of your peers. In 1345, justice is swift, brutal, and often entirely arbitrary, meted out by a local feudal lord, a biased royal judge, or a corrupt local official with absolute power. If you're accused of a crime, especially by someone with more power, wealth, or status than you, you're almost always considered guilty until proven innocent. And proving your innocence is not a matter of presenting evidence, cross-examining witnesses, or arguing your case. It is often a terrifying matter of surviving excruciating torture or a barbaric, religiously sanctioned ordeal. Imagine the ordeal by hot iron. You are led to the church or town square, your bare hand inspected for any trickery. You are then forced to grasp a red-hot iron bar, freshly removed from a roaring fire, with your bare flesh. You must walk 3 paces, a distance often measured precisely by the presiding priest or Lord's agent, and then your scorched, blistering, agonizingly burned hand is tightly bandaged and sealed. After 3 agonizing days, during which you endure unimaginable pain and sleepless nights, the bandage is ceremonially removed. If the wound miraculously appears to be healing cleanly, without significant infection, festering pus, or noticeable putrefaction, you are declared innocent, for it is believed that God has intervened to protect the righteous, a divine miracle. However, if it's festering, oozing pus, or looking putrid, which, without any form of antiseptic or sterile dressing, it almost certainly would be, you are unequivocally declared guilty, your suffering interpreted as God's judgment. Or consider the ordeal by cold water. You are led to a local pond, river, or large body of water. Your limbs are bound tightly, typically your right hand to your left foot, and your left hand to your right foot, rendering you immobile. Then, with a rope tied around your waist to retrieve your body, whether dead or alive, you're ceremonially thrown into the water, often after a priest has blessed the water, proclaiming its purity to reject the guilty. If you sink, you are declared innocent and quickly pulled out, assuming you haven't drowned in the process. If you float, you are unequivocally guilty, for the pure water has supposedly rejected your sinful body, unable to embrace you. These aren't trials in any sense of the word. They are brutal, superstitious gambles with your life, your limbs, and your immortal soul, utterly devoid of logic, reason, or any semblance of fairness, designed more to extract confessions or reinforce power than to uncover truth. And if you're found guilty, whether by ordeal, coerced confession, or simple accusation, punishments are not rehabilitative. They are primarily public spectacles designed to terrify the populace into submission and to deter future crime through gruesome example, whipping, often to the point of severe laceration and unconsciousness, branding, typically on the face, forehead, or hand, a permanent, disfiguring mark of shame that identifies you as a criminal for life, gruesome mutilation, cutting off hands for theft, ears for perjury or slander, noses for more severe moral or legal offenses like adultery or rebellion, public humiliation in the stocks or pillory, where you are chained and exposed to ridicule, verbal abuse, and physical assault from a jeering crowd throwing rotten food, stones, or even human waste, or even swift public hanging for surprisingly minor offenses like poaching on a lord's land, petty theft, or simply being a rootless vagrant. Death is a distressingly common punishment, often carried out in full public view, serving as a chilling reminder of authority's absolute power. There's no appeal system as we know it, no intricate legal battles stretching for years, no higher courts to plead your case to. Justice is served quickly, brutally, and often at the arbitrary whim of a local lord, his appointed agents, or a corrupt town mayor. You are entirely at the mercy of their power, their prejudices, and their moods, with virtually no recourse or avenue for appeal. The rule of law, the concept of individual rights, or the protection from cruel and unusual punishment, as we understand them today, simply do not exist for the common person. A wrong look, a misplaced word, a simple accusation from someone with influence, or simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time, could mean the swift, brutal end of your life, or a lifetime of agonizing disfigurement and social ostracism. Your modern understanding of due process would be not just useless, but dangerously naive. The medical misery, when sickness meant certain agonizing suffering. Got a pounding headache that splits your skull? A searing fever that makes your body convulse? A broken leg from a fall while plowing that leaves the bone protruding from your skin? Good luck. Medieval medicine is a terrifying, ineffective, and often lethal blend of religious superstition, ancient and often grossly misinterpreted text from Greek and Roman physicians like Hippocrates and Galen, and a heavy, almost obsessive reliance on barbaric procedures like bloodletting, purging, and bizarre herbal concoctions that could be as poisonous as they were ineffective. Doctors, if you can even find or afford one, and most peasants cannot, relying instead on local healers, wise women or monks, know absolutely nothing about germs, viruses, bacteria, or modern human anatomy. Their understanding of the human body is rudimentary at best, often based on crude dissections of animals or even incorrect assumptions. They believe illness is caused primarily by an imbalance of the four bodily humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, or by divine punishment for sin, the presence of bad air, miasma, or malevolent astrological influences. So, their remedies are often more harmful, excruciating, and lethal than the original disease itself. The most common, almost universal, and arguably most dangerous cure for nearly anything that ails you: bloodletting. Whether you have a fever, a cough, or a broken arm, a barber surgeon, who is usually also the village barber, will cut a vein and drain your blood into a bowl, believing it will restore the balance of humors and expel the disease. This practice, often done indiscriminately, frequently weakens you further, exacerbates your original illness, or, more terrifyingly, leads to fatal infection from unsterilized instruments and open wounds, often leading to sepsis and agonizing death. Need surgery? It's performed without any effective anesthesia, perhaps a swig of potent ale, a dose of crude opium or mandrake if you're very lucky, or a blunt force trauma to the head to render you unconscious. But often nothing at all, without antiseptics, so infection is virtually guaranteed, and with crude, unsterilized, often rusty tools that have likely been used on countless other sick or dying patients. Amputations, a common procedure for severe injuries or untreatable infections, are performed quickly, brutally, and agonizingly, almost always resulting in death from shock, massive blood loss, or the inevitable, overwhelming infection sepsis that follows. Setting a broken bone is a painful, inexact guesswork, often leading to improper healing, chronic pain, permanent deformity, or debilitating limp. Pain management is rudimentary at best. There are no pharmaceutical painkillers as we know them, just a few natural opiates, herbal sedatives, or distracting counter-irritants that offer minimal temporary relief. You endure unimaginable, prolonged pain, constantly. Childbirth is the leading cause of death for women of childbearing age, a brutal, terrifying lottery where both mother and infant frequently perish from hemorrhage, infection, obstructed labor, or complications that are easily managed today. Infant mortality rates are astronomical. Roughly half of all children do not survive past the tender age of 5, succumbing to childhood diseases like measles, smallpox, diphtheria, malnutrition, or simple accidents. Those who do survive childhood face a precarious existence. Life expectancy is tragically, brutally short, averaging around 30 to 35 years for those who make it past infancy, often cut short by a simple infection, like a common cold turning into fatal pneumonia, a bad harvest leading to starvation, or a minor injury that would be easily treatable today. There are no vaccines to prevent deadly diseases, no antibiotics to cure bacterial infections, no understanding of epidemiology or public health, and no widespread understanding of nutrition. When the Black Death arrives just a few years after 1345, it will decimate half the population of Europe, some regions losing up to 70 to 80% of their inhabitants, and medieval doctors will be utterly powerless, resorting to bizarre rituals, prayers, flagellation, self-punishment to appease God, or wearing grotesque bird-like masks filled with aromatic herbs to ward off the bad air. You are a biological entity at the complete mercy of an indifferent microscopic world, with absolutely no defense against the unseen killers that surround you. Every sniffle, every minor cut, every stomachache is a potential death sentence, turning your body into a constant battleground you are destined to lose. Your modern immune system, accustomed to a relatively sterile world, would be utterly overwhelmed. The psychological toll, fear, superstition, and the absence of hope and freedom. Beyond the relentless physical horrors and the pervasive stench of disease and death, the medieval mind is a landscape profoundly shaped by constant, unremitting fear and an unwavering, all-encompassing religious dogma that dictates every aspect of life. You live in a world where everything you don't understand, and that's almost literally everything beyond your immediate physical experience, is immediately attributed to divine will, or more terrifyingly, to malevolent demonic interference and the dark arts. A prolonged drought that threatens your family with starvation, God's righteous wrath, a test of faith, or a devil's curse brought upon the village by a hidden witch, a strange, debilitating illness that wastes away a loved one, causing agonizing pain, a witch's hex, direct demonic influence, or a punishment for some unconfessed sin, a child born with deformities or unusual traits, the devil's spawn, a changeling left by malevolent fairies, or a clear sign of divine displeasure. Your internal life is consumed by the profound, crippling fear of committing sin, the chilling, ever-present terror of eternal damnation in the fiery, torment-filled pits of hell, and the constant, crushing awareness of your own utter insignificance in the face of an all-powerful, often seemingly capricious and vengeful God. The Church, omnipresent and all-seeing, controls not just your spiritual life, but your moral conscience, your social interactions, your understanding of the universe, and every waking thought. Its rituals, sacraments, and pronouncements govern the rhythm of your days and the very fabric of your existence. Education is a rare and precious privilege, limited almost exclusively to the clergy, who hold the keys to knowledge and the highest echelons of the nobility. For you, the common peasant, your world is exquisitely small. Your village, the local church, and the fields you labor on from dawn till dusk. You are almost certainly illiterate, unable to read or write, cut off from most knowledge beyond what you learn through arduous oral tradition, practical experience, or the priest's weekly sermons. There are no books, no newspapers, no internet, no libraries. News travels agonizingly slowly, distorted by rumor, fear, and wild superstition, making it impossible to truly grasp the wider world or comprehend events beyond your immediate vicinity. The universe, as you know it, is a small, finite, geocentric place, with your flat Earth at its unmoving center, surrounded by celestial spheres whose movements are believed to determine your fate and influence everything from harvests to health. Beyond your familiar village boundaries, vast, terrifying unknowns exist, populated not just by real brigands, wild animals, and hostile foreigners who speak incomprehensible tongues, but by imagined monsters, mythical beasts, and the concept of individual agency, of shaping your own destiny, of pursuing personal happiness or self-fulfillment, is almost non-existent. Your fate is determined by your birthright, serf or free peasant, by the arbitrary whims of your feudal lord, by the dictates of the all-powerful church, and by the inscrutable, often cruel will of God. Hope, as we understand it, the belief in progress, in a better future attainable through individual effort and societal improvement, is a rare and profoundly dangerous luxury. You live for sheer physical survival, for the promise of a better afterlife, a spiritual reward for earthly suffering and piety, and for the simple, grueling continuation of your family line, tilling the same land as your ancestors. There's no self-help literature, no modern therapy, no understanding of mental health beyond demonic possession, spiritual affliction, or moral weakness. Depression, anxiety, chronic trauma, PTSD, clinical madness, these are not recognized conditions, but rather signs of character flaws, deep sin, or a direct, terrifying test from God. You endure your profound suffering in silence, your internal struggles, a solitary spiritual battle, a testament to your piety, or perhaps a sign of your damnation. This is a world designed not just to break you physically, but spiritually and mentally, leaving you a shadow, a mere shell of your modern, psychologically complex and resilient self. The constant, looming threat of famine, the unpredictable brutality of war, the relentless onslaught of incurable disease, and the existential terror of eternal spiritual damnation create an ever-present crushing weight on your soul, making every day a profound exercise in psychological endurance that would quickly lead to overwhelming anxiety, paranoia, and a profound sense of hopelessness for anyone with a modern mindset. The social trap. No mobility, no choices, no escape. Finally, let's address the rigid, suffocating, and utterly inescapable social structure you're trapped within. You are a peasant. You are born a peasant, and with almost absolute certainty, you will die a peasant, probably within a few miles of where you were born. There is virtually no social mobility. Your life, your labor, your future, and your very identity are entirely dictated by the feudal system, a rigid, unchanging, and deeply entrenched hierarchy where you are inextricably tied to the land and to your feudal lord. You are not a free agent. You are, in essence, a component of the manor, bound to the soil. You owe him unquestioning loyalty, arduous physical labor, often several days a week on his demesne lands, in addition to working your own small strips, and a significant portion of your meager harvest, often a third or more of your yield, plus other various taxes and fees, such as payments for using the Lord's mill or oven. You are, in essence, his property, or at least inextricably bound to his domain. You cannot simply pack up your meager belongings and leave your village or the Lord's manor without his express permission. If you attempt to do so, you become a rootless vagrant, an outlaw, an outcast with no legal protection, no land to work, and no means of sustenance. You would be easily apprehended by the Lord's bailiffs or local authorities and returned to your manor, or worse, face brutal punishment for insubordination. There are no modern job markets, no diverse career paths, no opportunities for personal growth or self-actualization beyond the narrow confines of your tiny village and your allotted hereditary role as a farmer, laborer, or perhaps a blacksmith's apprentice, if you're exceptionally fortunate. Your marriage is almost certainly arranged by your parents or your lord for economic convenience, land consolidation, or strategic alliance, not for romantic love or personal attraction. Your children will inherit your poverty, your servitude, and your profound lack of prospects, destined to repeat your arduous existence, tilling the same fields, living in the same conditions, and dying in the same village. The vast majority of humanity lives in this suffocating, unchanging cycle, generation after generation, endlessly tilling the same land with rudimentary tools, enduring the same crushing hardships, and repeating the same limited existence. The idea of personal freedom, of making your own choices about your life, your work, your relationships, your beliefs, or your geographic location, is a radical, dangerous, and utterly incomprehensible concept to the medieval mind. You are a mere cog in a vast, unchanging machine, your entire life's purpose dictated by ancient tradition, economic necessity, the arbitrary will of your Lord, and the dictates of the Church. This is not a simpler time. It is a time of crushing, absolute, and inescapable lack of choice. A world where your destiny is sealed at the moment of your birth, and genuine agency is a fantasy. Your world is small, static, and utterly without opportunity for self-determination or advancement. Any deviation from this preordained path brings immediate and severe consequences, from social ostracism to brutal physical punishment or even death. The suffocating lack of autonomy would be unbearable for anyone accustomed to modern freedoms. The pervasive threat of violence and war could waltz, and war could bing, Ritzleib to Tushanapek. As if hunger, disease, filth, and legal brutality weren't enough, you live in a world steeped in pervasive, unceasing violence. There's no standing police force to protect the common person. Justice is often self-administered, rough, and brutal. Feuds between families or even entire villages can escalate quickly into bloody conflicts. Bandits, rogue knights, and discharged soldiers roam the countryside, preying on travelers and isolated homesteads. Your village might be peaceful one day, and the next it's under attack by raiders seeking loot, food, or simply satisfying their own cruel desires. Beyond localized violence, larger-scale wars are a constant looming threat. Lords are constantly vying for power, land, and influence, leading to frequent skirmishes, sieges, and full-blown military campaigns. As a peasant, you are not merely an observer of these conflicts, you are often their primary victim. Armies, whether your lords or an invading force, will march across your fields, trampling crops, slaughtering livestock, and pillaging your meager possessions. Your home could be burned, your family scattered, or worse, brutalized or killed. You might be conscripted, forced to fight in a lord's army with little training, inadequate equipment, and even less chance of survival. Sieges are particularly horrifying. If your town or castle is besieged, you face starvation within the walls, or the brutal massacre that often follows a successful breach. The concept of civilian immunity is non-existent. Women are particularly vulnerable to assault during wartime, a grim reality of conquest. The landscape itself bears the scars of this constant conflict. Ruined castles, burned-out villages, and uncultivated fields are grim monuments to past violence, serving as a constant reminder that at any moment your entire existence could be shattered by the arrival of a hostile force. There's no 911, no National Guard, no international intervention. Your only protection is the strength of your village, the sometimes dubious protection of your lord's castle, or your own ability to hide and escape. The psychological burden of this constant insecurity, the knowledge that your life and livelihood could be violently extinguished at any moment by forces entirely beyond your control, would be utterly terrifying. Every distant sound, every plume of smoke on the horizon, every unfamiliar face passing through your village would spark paralyzing fear. Lack of privacy and constant surveilling. In the medieval world, the concept of personal privacy as we know it simply doesn't exist. Your life is an open book, under constant scrutiny from multiple angles. Within your own home, as discussed, you share a single cramped room with your entire family, and often livestock. There are no private bedrooms, no closed doors, no moments of solitude. Every conversation, every action, every bodily function is observed, overheard, and commented upon. Beyond your dwelling, your life is equally public. As a peasant, your work is communal. You labor in the open fields, side by side with your neighbors. Your every action, from the efficiency of your plowing to the piety of your prayers, is observed by your peers, your village elders, the Lord's bailiff, and the ever-watchful eye of the church. Gossip is rampant and powerful, capable of destroying reputations and sparking accusations. The church, in particular, exerted immense social and moral control. Confession was mandatory, meaning your sins, your deepest fears, and your personal struggles were laid bare before a priest. The concept of sin extended to almost every aspect of life, especially sexuality, which was often policed with astonishing intrusiveness, as you might recall from our previous discussions on medieval sexual practices. Marriages required public declarations, and consummation could even involve witnesses, as was the case for the bedding ceremony. Any deviation from societal norms, any perceived transgression against religious or secular law, would quickly become public knowledge, leading to ostracism, ridicule, or more severe punishment. Your personal identity is subsumed by your communal identity. You are defined by your family, your village, your role in society. There is no anonymity, no escape from the watchful eyes of your community and your superiors. This constant lack of privacy, the inability to truly be alone, to think private thoughts without the implicit understanding that they could be revealed or judged, would be profoundly suffocating and psychologically exhausting for anyone accustomed to modern individualism and personal space. You would live under perpetual pressure to conform, to act correctly, knowing that your survival depended on your adherence to an unforgiving social script. Superstition and ignorance of the natural world. Your understanding of the natural world is not based on science, but on an intricate web of superstition, folk wisdom, and religious dogma. Every unexplained phenomenon, from a sudden illness to a poor harvest, is attributed to supernatural causes. Thunder is God's wrath. Eclipses are omens. Strange lights in the sky are portents of disaster. You live in a world populated by fairies, goblins, witches, and demons, all lurking just beyond the veil of reality, ready to influence your life for good or ill. This isn't quaint folklore. It's a deeply ingrained belief system that profoundly affects your daily decisions. You avoid certain paths at night, perform rituals to ward off evil spirits, carry charms for protection, and constantly seek the blessing of the church to protect you from the unseen forces that could destroy your crops, sicken your family, or damn your soul. Illnesses are not caused by germs, but by malevolent spirits entering the body, or by the curse of a jealous neighbor. Cures involve strange concoctions, prayers, pilgrimages, or even exorcisms, rather than effective medicine. Your lack of scientific understanding extends to basic phenomena. You don't understand how weather works, why crops fail, or the true causes of disease. This profound ignorance, coupled with the constant threat of the unknown, fosters a deep-seated paranoia and fear. Every misfortune is a sign, every strange occurrence a potential threat. The world is not a predictable system of cause and effect. It is a chaotic, mysterious place, governed by unseen forces that must be constantly appeased or feared. This would be a crippling psychological burden for a modern rational mind, constantly seeking logical explanations in a world that offers none, leaving you feeling helpless and perpetually afraid. Travel and communication, isolation and danger. Need to visit a neighboring village or a distant market town? Prepare for an arduous, dangerous, and time-consuming journey. There are no paved roads, no cars, no trains, no planes. Travel is undertaken on foot, by slow ox cart, or, if you're wealthy, on horseback. Roads are often little more than muddy tracks, deeply rutted, unmaintained, and easily rendered impassable by rain or snow. Bridges are few and often in disrepair. Journeys that take minutes or hours today would take days or weeks in the medieval period. A journey of just 50 miles could easily consume a week of your life, depending on the terrain and weather, and every journey is fraught with peril. Bandits, wolves, and dangerous weather are constant threats. You could become lost, succumb to exposure, or fall victim to an ambush. There are no roadside inns with guaranteed safety, no emergency services, no maps as we understand them. Navigation relies on local knowledge, landmarks, and the sun. Communication is equally primitive and slow. There's no postal service, no telephones, no internet. News travels by word of mouth, carried by travelers, merchants, or church officials. Rumors abound, and accurate information is rare. A major event happening just 100 miles away could take weeks or months to reach your village, if it ever does, and it will be distorted through countless retellings. This profound isolation means your world is incredibly small. Your knowledge is limited to your immediate surroundings, and opportunities to learn about or experience anything beyond your village are almost non-existent. The lack of connectivity, the sheer effort required for any form of communication or travel, would be profoundly frustrating and confining for a modern individual accustomed to instant global access. Your world would shrink to the size of your manor, your entire existence dictated by its narrow horizons. The all-encompassing power of the church. While we've touched upon it, the true, all-encompassing power of the church in medieval life demands its own focus. The church was not just a religious institution, it was the bedrock of society, the supreme authority, often more powerful than kings or emperors. Its influence permeated every single aspect of your existence, from the moment of your birth, baptism, to your death, last rites, and beyond, the fate of your soul. The church dictated morality. Law, canon law, ran parallel to secular law, education, and even economic life. The church bell marked the rhythm of your day and year. Your village priest was often the most educated person you knew, the interpreter of God's word, and the gatekeeper to salvation. You attended Mass regularly, confessed your sins, and lived in constant fear of excommunication, which would cast you out of the community and condemn your soul to eternal hellfire. The church owned vast tracts of land, collected tithes, a mandatory 10% of your produce or income, and wielded immense political power. It was responsible for spiritual guidance, but also for enforcing orthodoxy. Heresy was a capital crime, and any questioning of church doctrine was met with brutal suppression. The church controlled what you believed, how you behaved, and what you could hope for in the afterlife. It was the primary source of charity, however meager, the keeper of records, and the arbiter of truth. For a modern individual accustomed to secular society, freedom of religion, and the separation of church and state, this absolute, unquestionable, and often terrifying power would be suffocating. Every aspect of your life would be judged by theological standards, every thought scrutinized for sin. Your agency, your individuality, and your right to question would be non-existent. You would be living under a spiritual totalitarianism that tolerated no dissent and offered eternal damnation as the penalty for nonconformity. Final verdict: you wouldn't last a day. You wouldn't last a day. You think you're tough. You've binge-watched every historical drama from Game of Thrones to Vikings, played every medieval-themed video game like Kingdom Come: Deliverance, devoured every fantasy novel featuring gallant knights, grand castles, and epic quests. You've seen the soaring cathedrals, the bustling and sanitized marketplaces, and the valiant warriors in shining armor. And deep down you've thought to yourself, a simpler time, a more authentic existence. I could totally survive that, but you are catastrophically, dangerously, profoundly wrong. The romanticized, idealized veneer of the Middle Ages that pervades popular culture is a comfortable modern fiction, a soothing, palatable lie we tell ourselves about a past that was in reality a relentless, grinding, agonizing assault on the human body, the human mind, and the very human spirit. You wouldn't last a week in this world, let alone a lifetime. In fact, your modern body, accustomed to comfort, sanitation, and safety, would barely survive a single brutal day. You would be broken, not just by the overwhelming, pervasive filth that would coat your skin and clog your lungs, not just by the constant gnawing pain of hunger, untreated disease, and incessant bodily discomfort, not just by the random terrifying violence that could erupt at any moment. You would be shattered, fundamentally and irrevocably, by the crushing, absolute, and inescapable despair of a world that is not just different from yours in terms of technology, social norms, or political structures, but operates on an entirely different plane of existence, with fundamentally alien concepts of life, death, morality, purpose, and even reality itself. The past is not just a different time, it is a different planet entirely. You would seek rational explanations for the rampant plagues where there were only divine mysteries to be endured. You would search for scientific causes while they searched for signs of sin, or the return of ancient Roman prophecies. You would not just be fighting for your physical survival against overwhelming odds. You would be fighting a losing battle against the very mindset, the very worldview of an entire era. Your individualism would be seen as arrogance, your desire for privacy as suspicion, your cleanliness as a strange obsession, and your questions as heresy. You would be utterly out of place, utterly exposed, and utterly doomed. Thank you for joining me on this bleak but hopefully profoundly enlightening journey. We often look to the past with a sense of nostalgia, perhaps yearning for a perceived simplicity, a return to roots, but it's crucial to truly understand the brutal, unvarnished realities that our ancestors endured, and to cultivate a deeper, more profound appreciation for the incredible, unprecedented, and perhaps incredibly fragile world of safety, sanitation, knowledge, freedom, and human rights that we now inhabit. If you found this exploration valuable and want to see more historical deep dives that fearlessly challenge our modern perspectives and shatter comforting myths, please make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Hitting that notification bell also ensures you don't miss our next deep dive into the darker corners of history. Sharing this video with someone who romanticizes the past, who genuinely thinks they could survive or thrive in the Middle Ages, also helps immensely and sparks important, uncomfortable conversations. History is not just a dusty collection of dates and kings. It is the raw, often uncomfortable, yet always compelling story of human struggle, resilience, and evolution. And by understanding it, by truly confronting its harsh truths, we can better understand ourselves, the incredible progress humanity has made, and the precious, delicate world we live in today.